इन तलबा से कहूँगा कि वो इस मुल्क का एक बहुत बड़ा असेट है और उन्हीं को आगे चल के इस मुल्क की बागडोर संभालना है।
Hello, Excellence.
What is excellence?
Excellence isn't something that happens overnight, but it's a gradual process.
Excellence is not a destination, it is a journey, and we pursue excellence every day in our lives.
Here at Integral University, we understand that every person is excellent in their own unique way, and hence we devise programs to bring out their excellence.
Imagine an engineer who can build a wall with his or her own hands. Imagine a person who just graduated and knows how to fix a bicycle or a motorcycle for that matter. Such is the skilling that our university believes in imparting to our students.
Excellence does not only means advancement in education but also becoming socially and emotionally mature enough to face the life and facing oneself.
Hello, Excellence.
The hands-on training imparted through our agile curriculum and imparted by our faculty with considerable industrial experience in the manufacturing, corporate, agriculture, law, medical and architecture fields, for example, allow our students to start delivering value to their employees and employers immediately.
At Integral University, pursuit of excellence is full of happiness, knowledge, friends, teachers, and yes, last but not the least, dreams.
Excellence is when you gather new knowledge every day.
Excellence is when you stay focused.
Excellence for me is setting a goal and achieve it.
That is the excellence we are targeting.
Hello, Excellence.
Hello, Excellence.
Hello, Excellence.
Hello, Excellence.
Hello, excellence.
Learn,
Grow,
Smile.
and keep going.
Welcome to the world of excellence.
Integral University, Lucknow. Inspiring excellence.
Hello and a very good afternoon to all the participants who have joined us today on the 13th day of the 2-week Quality Improvement Program on Research Methodology and Data Analysis, jointly organized by Faculty of Commerce and Management and Faculty of Doctoral Studies, Integral University, Lucknow. On behalf of Department of Commerce and Business Management, I, Dr. Uzmi Anjum, would like to welcome all the esteemed guests, eminent speakers, and profound participants to today's session. Last few days have been an extravaganza of some brilliant minds coming together and delivering expert lectures on research methodology and data analysis. Today's session will indeed be just another part of this 2 weeks reel. At the onset of this session, I hereby take the opportunity to introduce the audience with the key speakers of today's session. Firstly, we have with us Professor A.K. Saxena, the Dean of Faculty of Commerce and Management. And we also have our invited guest, Dr. Bilal Mustafa Khan, Professor from Department of Business Administration, Aligarh Muslim University. In order to maintain the highest standards of publication, there are extensive guidelines highlighting the responsibility of editors, reviewers, and authors. Data manipulation, fabrication, and falsification are some of the terms that are common to make it clear how the content of research work is manipulated. Similarly, writing proposal for research work in the present era is also a challenging task because constantly evolving trends in qualitative research design and the need to incorporate variable advances of technology has become a challenge. In this direction, today's session will throw light on topics like publication ethics, plagiarism, IPR, indexing and citations, and writing research proposals. To begin with today's session, I would first request our very dynamic and passionate leader, the mentor of our department, Professor A.K. Saxena sir, the Dean of the Faculty, to welcome the audience and share your opening remarks.
Good afternoon, Dr. Uzmi, and a very special warm greetings to the guest speaker of the day, Professor Bilal Ahmed Khan, Professor of Management, Integral University, Aligarh. My dear participants, it is indeed a matter of pleasure that we have entered in the 13th day of the QIP on research methodology and data analysis. Today, Professor Bilal Sahab is going to deliver a lecture on very vital issues. That is said to be the real AC test for a researcher in his lifetime, because PhD is done once and thesis is also written once. That is plagiarism under the publication ethics, plagiarism, patents, copyrights, and IPR. Then citation, indexing, journal referencing, and its style, writing research proposals to funding agencies. To my mind, plagiarism today is a menace these days. Plagiarism today is a menace these days. UGC had drawn guidelines for minimum and maximum plagiarism. UGC has also launched, they have prescribed that 10% of the plagiarism is allowed for a research scholar to do. Now here comes the question that those researchers who are conducting research on the empirical subjects where the primary and secondary data both are to be collected, what should be the extent to which he is going for consultation and collection of data, so what should be the extent of plagiarism, and what should be the extent of plagiarism where the thesis or the research subject is mainly based on the fully or purely based on the secondary data. So there is scope of a little more percentage of plagiarism where the thesis is based on the secondary data. That's why UGC has kept the upper limit as 10%. UGC has launched a full paper in coursework of research scholars under caption Research and Publication Ethics, RPE, which we have already implemented and the whole country has implemented, wherein in fact publication, ethics in the research and publication are particularly taught with 5 units. So at each and every stage he has to be said to be cautious and go with a warning that he may not be said to be allowed, said to be entered in the plagiarism. But human errors are there, premonitions, hunches, and other prejudices and biases. Sometimes you find that even you do not know and you do plagiarism, that is said to be human behavior. patents, copyrights, and IPR, conceptual overtures and differentiation between three concepts needs a lot of clarity in the minds of researchers. What parameters researchers should take, to minimize plagiarism needs to be identified. What parameters you are going to take in respect of these three concepts which is of paramount importance. So should take to minimize plagiarism need to be identified and develop enough clarity and transparency in order to avoid unethical practices. Indexing, referencing, and citation styles are very sensitive issues and hence handled with much more care by the researcher with what type of style you are going to adopt, whether it is API style or Chicago style and others. Bibliography, and nowadays bibliography start with W, bibliography start with B. Bibliography needs to be discussed with the researcher because you are today talking about webinars and the websites. Instead of doing the desk research, we are going for field research and online researches nationally and globally. Finally, project funding is a vital task. Funding agencies are with open hands inviting the proposals from the present and prospective researchers. But what is happening? Our researchers are not in a position to develop good research proposals. Today, I would request Professor Bilal Saab to kindly give them the guidelines how to develop the good research proposals. Because development of proposal for seeking project funding and its standard format to be understood by the researchers, because there are many funding agencies for social science projects, which includes commerce and management. Research projects takers are few, as I already told. Takers are few, givers are more. And few research scholars apply. Why the number of research proposals are day by day declining in the northern India and day by day increasing in the southern area research scholar. This is my old experience of 1997-2002 when I was director at ICT. Today I don't know the situation, but by and large we find that the research scholars from the southern area are much more cautious, methodical, systematic, and they are always alert situation they avoid, and they apply in time to AICT, UGC, ICSR, and so many other funding agencies, and they get the projects. So with all this observations to be done at the last, but with this opening remark, I request Dr. Uzmi to kindly invite the learned speaker of the day, Professor Bilal Muhammad Khan from AMU. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for all your valuable remarks. And now I would like the audience to welcome the key speaker of today's session. After a highly acclaimed first session in the last week, I am happy to introduce you all with Dr. Bilal Mustafa Khan, Professor from Department of Business Administration, Aligarh Muslim University. He is an engineering graduate with postgraduate in MBA, having dual specialization in marketing and finance. He is having more than 20 years of experience in teaching, research, and was also the head of the Department of Management Studies in Manipal University, Dubai campus. Dr. Khan has served as a visiting professor to Asian Institute of Technology, Bangkok. He has also been appointed as visiting professor to other national and international universities as well. Dr. Khan is regularly invited by leading B schools, universities, and academic bodies as a resource person for conducting different faculty development programs and management development programs. He is also one of the pioneers in using statistical software such as SPSS, MOS, and LISREM for academic research. He is having more than 100 publications and articles in both national and international reputed journals. Dr. Khan is widely cited for his research work, and his collaborations with many foreign authors are also in limelight. He's a widely traveled person and has varied research interests like luxury fashion brands, advertising, social media, and structural equation modeling. Dr. Khan is an academic, active academic administrator, an avid reader, and an active sports person, a real all rounder in every sense. Having got to interact with him with such a dynamic and inspirational teacher during my MBA course at AMU, I today really feel blessed and elated to introduce my own teacher today. Without any delay, I welcome you, sir, once again to this platform, and I request you to kindly engage the audience who are very eager to hear from you.
Thank you,
Welcome,
Usmi.
sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the kind
Audience,
words. And
thank
thank
you,
you,
sir.
Professor Saxena, for the kind words. You were so nice of you, and I could actually see that Professor Saxena himself is a trove of information and knowledge, and the way he was speaking, I thought that, if a person like him were to engage today's session, it would have been the best. But nevertheless, I've been given the task of, doing justice to whatever topic has been given. So I'll try my level best, and I'll try to live up to the expectations. So thank you, Usmi. Thank you very much. Thank you, Integral. And so I'll straight away, begin with presenting my screen, and we'll start the presentation. So I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, sir, your screen is visible.
Okay, so it says QIP on research methodology and data analysis. Right? Does it say it's visible?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let me start. So when I was trying to put in the introductory slide, the title slide, I suddenly realized that, the topic is pretty vast. And today itself, I spoke to one of the organizers that how much time do we actually have? So, rather than put in all those topics, what I did was I just put in, introductory slide saying it's QIP on research methodology and data analysis, which I just, took down from, the program brochure. Nevertheless, so the agenda for today is pretty, wide and broad. So obviously we are going to talk about publication ethics. We are going to talk about intellectual property rights in research, citations and referencing, which Dr. Saxena was actually speaking about. I believe that I had a look at, the program brochure, and I realized that some of these citation and referencing style must have already been taken up by people. So nevertheless, we'll take this up, and we'll take it up in a different way. Then we'll look at journal indexing. Journal indexing is one aspect. The other aspect being your citations and the impact factor. They're all interrelated, but nevertheless, they are different concepts. What is journal indexing? What are citations, and how are they important, and what is impact factor? They're all related concepts, but we're going to be discussing that. And then we'll talk towards the end, we'll talk about research funding. Okay, so there are many avenues for research funding within India, outside India, government, private organizations, NGOs. So we have a lot of options, and the format varies from one agency to another. The type of grant and the funding that is available also varies. Sometimes it's merely scholarship, sometimes it's for infrastructure development, sometimes it's travel grants, sometimes it's for major projects, sometimes it is for minor projects. So what we'll do is we'll start with the first topic of the day, and that's going to be your publication ethics. Now, before I go ahead, we all know, I think, whether we are teaching subjects like business ethics or not, we do know what ethics are and what the law is. So we all know what ethics are. Ethics is something, which is over and above, the laws. So nobody can hold you guilty for, I should say, there are organizations which have code of ethics. But generally speaking, in real life, laws, if you violate the laws, you will be punished. Like, for example, this particular lecture, I have been asked to deliver a lecture on these particular topics for 1.5 lectures, okay, 1.5 hours. So I could have, very easily, or I could have just very easily, not prepared for the lecture, or I could have, there are two extremes, or I could have extensively prepared for the lecture. The organizers would not hold me, they would not punish me for anything if I were to just deliver a mundane lecture. They would not reward me if I'm going to deliver a excellent lecture. So it all has to do with ethics. But if there is a law, the law says that you have to submit your PhD, and along with that PhD, you need to have 2 publications. So 2 publications is the law. But the quality of the publication is something to do with your ethical issues. So, ethics is something which is sort of voluntary. But what has happened in recent times, I'm just giving you the background of ethics, not the publication ethics. But in recent times, what has happened is that some of these ethical, issues, have taken the shape of laws. Okay, so they are not ethics anymore. They have become laws. So we'll discuss that, in a short while. So let's just go ahead. Now, when we are looking at research and publication, so publication ethics is one dimension. Research ethics is the bigger concept. And within the research ethics, you have the publication, because when you can do a research, you also publish papers out of that. Okay, so publication generally is a team effort. We are thinking in terms of, right now, our focus is on, a PhD degree or, writing research publications. But if you look at the screen, you can clearly see that there are 3 parties which are involved. One is obviously the author or the authors which write the paper, and then you have the journal and you have the reviewer. Okay, so many of us sometimes are reviewers. So reviewers need to have their own set of ethics and their own set of issues. Similarly, the journal, as we all know, the journal has, a financial stake. So obviously, we are not going to be discussing from the perspective of, the journal or the publisher. Today, what we are going to do is we are going to focus mostly on ethics, publication ethics related to the authors. Okay, so first of all, we need to understand, why do these ethical issues arise? Okay, so I always tell my students, ever since, especially in terms of publication of papers, there is this dilemma which has been there for a long time, that is called as publish or perish. And today it has become very, very important ever since we had the 6th pay commission by the UGC, which had that, API, that is academic performance indicators, and the number of papers that you need to have published. And if you want to be promoted from, one stage to another, or from, from assistant professor to associate professor, or from associate to professor, you need to have a certain number of papers. So, publishing is something, which has become, the order of the day. It's the rule, you need to do it. If you don't do it, you'll not. So that's the law. The law says that if you want to become a professor, you need to have 5 publications. That's the law laid down by the UGC. And if you don't have 5 publications, you'll not become a professor. That's it. You don't have a PhD, you'll not become a professor. So, one of the things is that there are a lot of pressures, that is obviously have to do with, your job. Okay. The other pressures are that you have to keep up with your peers. So many times people just tend to publish because there's sort of competition within the department, outside the department. You may have those kind of competition, and at a very higher level, I have seen that competition. Like, for example, I'm a group of, a structure equation modeling expert group. So I'm a member of that. And I see there are 2 or 3, what you call as legends there, living legends, like, Stanley Mulak, and, we have Les Haydock. They are all competing with each other. Every day they are having some sort of discussions and bickering, and everybody is trying to come out with a newer paper. So that's the kind of pressure that you have. But that's at a particular level. And then another important reason for reason for publishing is obviously to get grants. So if you have a good and established track record of publications, you are likely to secure funding from the government. Okay. And in life sciences and other domain, it's always about being the first to discover a drug, or to some new process or something. But one of the things which I see is listed at the bottom, but it's not the least. It's there at the bottom, but it's not the least. So I'll just take a laser pointer, and this is the point that I want to make. Lack of knowledge about research and publication. I think this is one of the major reasons. We did a study a few years back, and that was about this particular topic only. We wanted to find out. So we did study some college teachers, college and university teachers, some 500 college and university teachers across India, and we realized that one of the reasons why many researchers, young researchers especially, make mistakes, young teachers make mistakes, is that they do not have sufficient knowledge about what is research and publication ethics. They don't know what is right and what is wrong, or where to stop. They don't know the boundaries, they don't know the limits. So that is what we'll try to focus that. So all these things, all these actually encourage, what you call as shortcuts. And when we are taking those shortcuts, we are likely to make mistakes, resort to practices which are unethical. Okay. So, like I said, socially acceptable practice we later deem wrong. When I just give you a simple example. Throughout my life, like the rest of us, when I was a small child, when I used to listen, and I'm talking of, let's say, 12, 13, 14 years. So when I used to listen to music, we would, we would duplicate music cassettes with immunity. There were a lot of shops, and nobody knew better that, copying, from or photocopying today. We are photocopying with immunity without knowing that it's a violation, So over a period of time, when there is a certain level of awareness, today there is a certain level of awareness among people that there is something called as copyright. Even those who are enforcing the law, the police does not know what is a copyright. There is rampant piracy, okay? But people are least bothered. Why? Because they accept this as a socially, acceptable practice. Over a period of time, this may be deemed wrong, okay? Accidents, and there are some wrongs which we try to justify. Arey, sab karte hain, koi baat nahi, thoda sa to hum bhi kar sakte hain, okay? Then, there are other things which, result out of what we call as carelessness, especially in research, is that we miss out on new methods or technology or the latest researches. This has to do more with our carelessness. Okay, I've seen many research publications. I'm a reviewer of some of the international journals, and I do get a lot of research theses. I've found that I tend to miss out. I've seen that most of the researchers actually tend to miss out on the latest researches that have been done in that particular area. Why is this? This is because of carelessness, negligence. Okay, and then the other important issue is that there can be ethical issues where you have, you can become involved in that with the wrong of others. Like, for example, I'll not take the names, but I know of a senior professor in AMU. He was in a particular department, and there was an inquiry instituted against him. And what was the issue? The issue was that he was accused of plagiarism. Now, the professor simply said that when he went to the committee, and I was also part of that, one of the members of that inquiry committee, the professor told me clearly. He said, sir, although he was very senior to me, he said, sir, the scholar wrote the paper, usne mera naam dal diya. I don't even know what the paper was all about. He just wrote my name, and he wrote the name of a few others, and he submitted. Now, there are two things which are wrong here. One is that was a socially acceptable practice. You put the name of your guide, put the name of the head of the department, put the name of the lab chief. That's something which is wrong. Actually, you shouldn't be doing it. But what happened? Just because I didn't pay attention, I didn't contribute, I didn't vet the paper, I got caught. So this can happen. So that it happened with that gentleman. So that's what he told me. He said, sir, I didn't do anything. It was my scholar. But what was wrong on his part was that he should have actually contributed to the paper. That's one thing. He should not have claimed the authorship. The second part was that he should not have let the paper, be published, or whatever you want to call it, without having, gone through the paper, without having ascertained whether it has been copied or not been copied from different sources. Okay. And, many times we, as researchers, as young researchers, we do not know what is the right thing to do. Okay. And then, like I said, we have those self-deception and other psychological tendencies as human beings, where we tend to say that, oh, theek hai, chalta hai, koi nahi pakadega, itna to sab karte hain, those kind of things, chalta hai attitude. So these are the major reasons, some of these are very clear to you, like, the professional pressures. But the professional pressure is one part. The other part is that most of the mistakes that occur is due to, lack of knowledge about research and publication ethics. So we'll try to, just focus on some of the ethical and legal issues which are related with research. Like I said, research is the broader term. It encompasses publication also. So one of the, as you can see, I've listed them out. One is called as the publication. So I've divided them into two broad, what you call as categories, the kind of issues that you may have. One is related with the publication misconduct. Okay. And I've listed them. There are duplication, redundant, and wasteful publications. Okay. Then inappropriate identification of authors and orders. That's pretty important. I'll focus a little bit on this as well. And then inappropriate acknowledgement of past researches and having your own biases in this. Carelessness and citation bias. Okay, so a little bit of this also, and then we'll come to the plagiarism, things like self plagiarism and self citation. Okay, and then we have the conflict of interest, which I'll explain. So these are called as publication misconduct. Then you have the scientific misconduct, like Professor Saxena was telling you, and Azmi was, she was also telling you. Yeah, it was about the fabrication and the falsification of data. Okay, this has become a very common practice. I'll give you an example, fabrication and falsification of data. Now, what is fabrication of data is something which, I'll explain with the help of certain examples, but as we go ahead. So let's just go ahead. These are some, examples of the sin that you might commit, and these are their examples. So right now, I'm not going to focus on this. I'll focus more on what exactly are your redundant, duplicate publications. Okay, so redundant publications are basically duplicate publications, and this can happen with people. I know it's a very, very common practice. Now, many of you may not be knowing this, okay, especially the young researchers, as I always say. I have seen one of my PhD students. She's a faculty, and she had completed her PhD. She was a faculty when she did her PhD. So it's not that she was a research scholar and then she became a faculty. And many times I see her submitting, those publications. And when I see those publications being submitted, I also get a copy of the email. So she submits it online, on portals like or Emerald and other through Manuscript Central. So I get an email, and when I get an email, one day I realize that I'm getting 5 emails from 5 different journals, and the same paper has been submitted in the journals. So I called her up and I told her, Poonam, what are you doing? This is wrong. She said, sir, why is it wrong? I said, don't you know that you cannot submit the same paper at the same point of time? You have to wait for the rejection or the acceptance, and then you have to send it to another person. She said, sir, I never knew that. Okay, so there are many issues related with redundant publication. Okay, so redundant publications are actually also called as wasteful publication, and they have a reason for that. Okay, and what are the different types of wasteful publications that could be there? One, which is a very common practice, dividing the results in of a single study into 2 or more papers. I have seen this happen very often, and from reputed professors. There are gentlemen, I won't want to take their name, but they have done a lot of research on country of origin effect. Okay, and from the same study, they have published at least 4 or 5 papers. So what they have done is, in the first paper, they have taken, they have examined the relationship between 2 variables. Then in the second paper, they have examined the relationship between some 3 other variables. And in the 4th paper, they have actually examined the relation of all the 5 variables together. So that's what they have done. So such kind of practice is unethical. It is called as, the name that people have given it is called as salami publication. That is, from one particular study, and related to the results, you need not do this. Okay, so this is considered to be an unethical practice. Okay, republishing the same material in successive papers in different format and content, this is also very common. And in fact, when I was a young researcher, I should say that I was about to make this mistake, and my guide, he told me, no, this is not correct. It is totally unethical. I shouldn't be doing that. But that was because I did not know the rules. I did not know what is right and what was wrong. So this can happen with many people. So you are not supposed to republish the same material in successive papers. Okay, unless and until something people sometimes there's something called as self-citation. This is again a very unethical practice. In order to increase your citations, many people tend to cite their own papers. Now, unless and until you are Einstein or you have done something, groundbreaking novel work, what is the need of citing yourself over and over again? So I have seen this is a practice. I know of certain professors and I know of certain researchers who tell their research scholar that whatever paper you publish, please include 10 of my citations. I have seen reviewers, this is again related with unethical practices of reviewers. I have seen reviewers, international reviewers of international journals, when they send in the comments, they will send in a comment saying, you haven't cited this and this paper. And later on, you get to realize that this and this paper actually was their paper. So they wanted their paper to be included in your paper so that they get an additional citation for that. So these are all unethical practices. So these are not done. Then blending data from one study with additional data to extract yet another paper that could make its way on the second set of data alone, meet extenders. I have seen this happening in PhD thesis. I have seen one of my scholars recently, he said, sir, I made this question. I said, why do you have these 3-4 variables? They're not needed. And we don't need this demographic data because there is no demographic, study that there is no demographic analysis that we are going to perform. You know what does he tell me? He tells me, sir, what we can do is once the PhD is over, I can use this, these additional, variables, and then, I can actually publish some more papers. So again, that's an example of, what we call as meat extender. That's as people call it. Okay. So what do you need to do? You do not submit manuscripts simultaneously, in 2 or more journals. A lot of people do that. I gave you the example of one of my scholars. That is totally wrong. It is not acceptable. And you have to wait. So if the first journal rejects, then you can send it elsewhere. Okay. And another important thing is, this is a question that many people ask, sir, we have sent the abstract, like for example, in a conference, or in a seminar, you have sent in your abstract. Now the abstract, sending your abstract and the publication of abstract is not the publication of the full paper. So if you have sent your abstract somewhere, you can publish the full paper somewhere else. But if it is just the abstract, beyond that, it is illegal and unethical. Okay. So always remember that. If you have sent the abstract, there is no harm in sending the full paper somewhere else. Okay. Because your full paper has not been published. Only an abstract has been published. And if your full paper has not been published, how will you disseminate information? Why do you write a research paper? Because it is assumed that you have done something novel, something unique, and you want the world to know. That is the reason for writing a research paper. Obviously, that is the ideal reason, the utopian reason. But we know the reasons why many people write research papers. We write research papers, it's not because we want to do anything novel, it's just that we want to increase the number of papers because of the competition, because of funding, because of promotions. So that's a different story. But ideally, research paper needs to be published because you want to disseminate the information to the world of your findings and your methodology. And if your abstract has been published, nobody is going to know what you have done and how you have done and what are your real conclusions and findings and implications. So you can publish your paper. Okay, always remember that. Then you are not supposed to publish your papers, the same paper, in different languages. Okay, always remember that. That's a mistake which many people make. I've seen this happening. So never do that. If the paper has been published, whether it is in Hindi, Urdu, English, Marathi, Arabic, French, German, you are not supposed to change the language and publish it as a paper. That's again considered to be, misconduct, publication misconduct. Okay. So, this is something which I'm sure all of you know. So if you have sent a manuscript and if you do not receive a response from the editor, please write to them again. Please write to them again. If they fail to respond, you keep track of those emails that you have sent. If they fail to respond after repeated emails, then obviously you can go ahead and submit it somewhere else. But if they do tell you that it's under process, the review is under process, either you withdraw the manuscript. You can tell them that you want to withdraw the manuscript. If you withdraw the manuscript, then it is fine. You can submit it elsewhere. But if you don't withdraw the manuscript and you keep on, hoping that they will submit, meanwhile, let me submit somewhere else, and the process has become very, very lengthy, so you can't wait and you want to submit somewhere else. That's wrong. You have to withdraw from one place and then resubmit, or until you get a rejection. If it is accepted, obviously you're fine with it. That's not an issue. Okay. You have to keep the records of these emails. Okay. Now let's come to another kind of misconduct. But before I go ahead, let me just tell you, if you want more details, more details about what your publication ethics are, I can simply show you something. I'll just you can simply type publication ethics, okay, as a keyword. When you type publication ethics as a keyword, you will get all these what you call as links for different journals, different organizations. Like for example, Hindawi, you will get for Springer, Elsevier, all the major publishers, universities, organizations, like for example, COP, okay, community, Committee on Publishing Ethics. COP is a very, very famous and popular what you call as resource for publication ethics. Okay, so you could always go there and refer to individual journals have their own what you call as, or databases, or publishing houses have their own, you know, what you call as publication ethics. They have it, so you can actually go there and you can have a look at. Like for example, you have, for example, Hindavi. They have their publication ethics. Okay, this is Committee on Publication Ethics, the organization that I was telling you. This is a very, very famous organization. Most of the people refer to this. So if you need to actually refer, you can actually go to these if you are in doubt. Okay. Now, so let's come to the next part, which has to do with the authorship part. Okay. Now, obviously, as we all know, authorship is actually based on substantial contribution, you know, maybe to the idea of the publication, or to the design, or, you know, acquisition, data collection, analysis and interpretation of data, and obviously drafting and writing, and, you know, critically approving, or, you know, or critically examining the article. So we all know, as a researcher, we all know what are the contributions, you know, that, you know, you can make. So important issue here is that first, who can be an author, and what should be the authorship order. Okay, and there are certain guidelines which have been recommended, and issues and problems with authorship that are there. So let me just briefly touch upon these. Now, the Vancouver Group and the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, they have declared, you know, they have a guideline, for example. So every journal has a guideline, or every publisher usually has a guideline, and it comes under the publication ethics. So they say that the person must have substantially contributed to the conception and design or acquisition of data. Okay, and they have listed 3 conditions: draft the article or revise it critically for important intellectual content, and give their approval for the final full version to be published. Now, these conditions have to be fulfilled if you have to be an author. Okay, all others, people who have helped you, like for example, you know, when you are submitting your thesis, you write an acknowledgement that this gentleman helped me, that lady helped me, my teacher helped me, my mother helped me, my father helped me. Those are merely acknowledgements. So you can have those acknowledgements, but they will never be considered as author. Like for example, you take the help of a statistician, but that statistician is a paid statistician. So if you want to acknowledge that, a statistician will, you know, you can acknowledge that you have taken the help of a gentleman, you know, or XYZ, but he can never be the author because he has no contribution whatever except for, you know, a professional interest. Okay, so you know, what are the things that you need to understand? You need to understand that when you are talking of authorship, you basically have, if it is a, like for example, many times I have written single authored paper, so there are no issues in that. There are no authorship issues. But when there are multiple authors, like for example, we have an executive you know, PhD program. Okay, that's for working professionals generally, and they are teachers also in that. So teachers can also pursue their PhD. So in that, we have 2 guides. One is the internal guide, the other is the external guide, and we have the research scholar. So we have a very, very, you know, defined policy, which we tell the scholars straight away. I tell my scholars, I say that you as a researcher, because you are doing the major part of the work, you have to be the first author. There is no doubt about that. And what we are going to do is, your external guide, who's also a senior professor, and myself, it will depend on the contribution that so if he or she makes more of the contribution, it's up to you. So you make a decision. If your external guide has helped you more in that particular paper, his contribution is more, you put her name as the second author, or his name as the second author, or you put mine. So we have a very, very clear delineation. So this is best, you know, if it has to do with contribution, but that doesn't happen many times, you know. To be really honest, what generally happens, head of the department ka naam rakh do, guide ka naam dal do, put the name of the guide, put the senior professor, this professor is going to be the head of the department next, put his name. I have seen that happening. So a paper which where was only one author actually ends up becoming, you know, authored by 3 or 4 or 5 papers. Okay, sorry, 4 or 5 persons. Now, related to this authorship, there is an issue of who is going to be the corresponding author. Corresponding author is mainly the person who's the one, you know, I mean, he could be the first author, he could be the second author, he could be the third author, whatever. That's a different thing. You know, that depends on the contribution and the sequence that you have agreed upon. But a corresponding author is usually the one, because of the fact that he has done most of the work, he knows everything. But generally, it happens that way, but that's not a rule. So the third author could be the corresponding author. So all correspondence from the journal and the editors would be actually addressed to him. So everything would be, but today in an era of internet, things have become very easy. Even though you have the corresponding authors, if you are the co-author, you will get an email. If you are required to make any changes or any reviewer comments or any editorial decision, you will get an email. Okay, so the concept of corresponding author is not so significant, and it was in the time of when we did not have emails and electronic modes of communication. Okay, now what are the abuses which are to be avoided? One is the ghost authorship. I have seen this happen, leaving out authors who should be included. I'll tell you. Let me just quote this. It's a very famous, and it's a public incident. There's a very famous professor of corporate branding, corporate brand management. His name is Mr. Balmer, M.T. Balmer. He's written revolutionary papers on corporate brand management. He had a scholar in South Africa. It was a she, actually. There was a lady who had done her research, and from her research thesis, Professor Balmer, he might have been contributing because he was her guide. And in many instances, guides contribute a lot. So what he did was, he wrote a paper out of a thesis without putting her name as second, third, or whatever author. And later on, when the paper became famous, she realized, oh God, this is from my thesis. And then she actually wrote to the journal. And the journal actually wrote to Professor Balmer. And in Professor Balmer, he had to, actually publicly acknowledge. So what he did was, he had to acknowledge. And today, if you were to download that particular paper, there is a footnote saying that this paper has been taken out from the thesis of this person, and which I failed to acknowledge, and which was ethically wrong. So that's written. So that can happen. Ghost authorship means leaving out people who should be included, and this happens, where there is too much of when there are I've seen, like for example, I'll give you a particular instance. I know of a faculty member of mine. I got an invited, it was an invited research publication from a editor in UK. I knew him. So he said, Bilal, you write a paper on this particular theme. It was Islamic, human resource management. So obviously I was not from an area of either, Islamic thought, related to publications or, from human resource management. So I contacted a faculty in my department. So that faculty actually, I still recall, so that faculty actually directed one of her research scholars, one of her very promising research scholars. She had done most of the work. And when the paper was sent, I realized I was the first author. So I realized that I was the first author. So I told her, why am I the first author? So she said, you have the contact. I said, but that is not, a criteria for the authorship. Nevertheless, the paper was sent and it got published, and I am the first author, but nevertheless, I really feel bad because actually it was the work of that particular lady and she should have been the first author. Anyway, gift authorship, like I said, including authors who did not contribute. You did not contribute at all. So your head of the department and your, next head of the department, your dean or whatever. So you have to exclude, the people from authorship who have not contributed, like for example, the departmental institutional chair, people who got the funding, provided general supervision. Of course, many times people hire what you call as agencies to collect the data, or somebody who provided purely technical support, let's say the softwares and everything, in your computer lab. And these days, what is happening is you are getting writing assistance. Earlier also it used to happen, but now it is institutionalized. So you can go to the publishers, they will help you with, they have a list of, accredited, what you call as, writing assistants who can actually on payment basis write the paper for you. So you need to acknowledge these people if you want to, but they can never be the authors. So this has to do with, how the authorship should be. So the best practices are, you need to discuss the order of authorship right at the beginning. Like I told you, I always discuss with my IMA scholars, that is the executive MBA, executive PhD program that we have, always tell them that you will be the first author as a researcher, and second and third will depend on who has contributed more, the external guide or the internal guide. Okay, and so these are the things related with authorship. Now this is an important topic. Okay, plagiarism. Now, what is plagiarism? We all know this. Even as young researchers, we all know what is plagiarism. So I'll focus on some key things. One is, what are the softwares? Okay, so plagiarism, how do we define? The first thing is, how do we define plagiarism? So plagiarism is when you copy somebody's, not only the work, it could be even an idea. Okay, So when you are appropriating somebody else's work and passing it off as your own, then that becomes something called as a plagiarism. Okay, recently plagiarism was in very I mean, it was there on Twitter when an Israeli athlete, and that was a rarity, she won a gold medal. The national anthem of Israel was played, and then people realized that Anu Malik, who had made some music in the 90s, was actually was copied from that particular, for the national anthem of Israel. So Anu Malik is famous for all these things. Okay, so I'm not judging him, I'm just telling you. So this is what we call as plagiarism, passing off somebody else's work as your own, and this happens in academics. Okay, this happens in academics. So we'll be focusing this. Okay, we'll be focusing on this particular aspect. Okay, so plagiarism, passing off someone else's work as your own, whether we do it deliberately or not, but it is plagiarism. So you can never say that I did not know the law, I did not know the rule. Ignorance of law is no excuse. We are always told that ignorance of law is no excuse. Okay, so sometimes we do it knowingly, and sometimes we do it plagiarism, we do it unknowingly. We do not know, we are not sufficiently informed as to what plagiarism is. So when we are not acknowledging the data, the table, or the figures, or the graphics that have been used from other writers, or sometimes we paraphrase from a source. So I'll discuss these very quickly. Okay, so it can happen, plagiarism can happen at any stage: planning, research, writing, or even publishing. So even an idea is also plagiarized. Okay, so that can also be. So type of plagiarism and the sources which are not cited, this is something which is very important, because a lot of plagiarism actually happens knowingly, like I said, but a lot happens without you knowing that you are actually doing something which is wrong. So the first is, which is very obvious, which we call as the ghost writer. There are people who just copy everything verbatim, word for word. I'll tell you, when I was an MBA student, my guide, not my guide, one of my teacher, he was my mentor actually. He used to teach us international finance, and I still remember the textbook was something. It was by the name of Sharp. No, Sharp was financial management. It was Shapiro, I think. I'm not from the area of finance, but I think those were the names of the textbooks. So once he told me, Bilal, go to this particular book house, New Book House, or New Mobile Book House, and ask for these two books. And he told me the book is by some gentleman called as Bhalla and Tuteja and Preeti Singh. Sorry to take names, but I only remember those names. So I went and got those two books for him, and trust me, everything was the same. Even the equation numbers were the same in those two books, and both the books were actually a copy of those books that I had just mentioned. The Bhalla and Tuteja and Preeti Singh, they were copied verbatim. Okay, that's what we call as ghost writer, who hasn't done anything. So that's downright illegal. Okay, then you have people which is called as the photocopy, where the writer actually copies significant portions of the text from one single sources without any changes. So significant portion. Okay, then you have other forms also, where you have people who copy from different sources, just change, search for synonyms, tweak the paper a little bit, and then pass it off as their own. So such kind of writers are known as patch writing. Many people, okay, the first two, the ghost writer and the photocopy, we all know is downright unethical and illegal. We may be penalized for that. But the potluck paper, the potluck author, like I was just discussing a few minutes back, the patch writing, where you actually take papers from different sources, and you make small changes in them, search for different synonyms. It has become very easy using Microsoft Word. You can click on one word and you can search for synonyms. So a lot of people do that. Many people think that it is not illegal, but it is. So there is still misconception, that if we take it from different sources and we may tweak it a little bit, we change a little bit of the language, some of the synonyms and all those, that becomes our paper. That's absolutely wrong. So this can happen because of lack of knowledge. Okay, then look at this, the poor disguise. Okay, in such kind of papers, what happens? Essentially, most of the content has been retained, but the paper's appearance has slightly been changed by certain keywords and phrases. Okay, the labor of laziness. The next category is the writer takes the time to paraphrase. I'll tell you what paraphrasing is in a few minutes. So you actually change the sentence, you paraphrase the sentence, but instead of acknowledging, and making it original work, or instead of acknowledging, you don't acknowledge. Okay. And then there is something called as the self-stealer, which is also called as self-plagiarism. The writer borrows generously or recycles from his own previous work, violating policies concerning the expectation of originality. So a paper has to be original. So if you are recycling from your own paper, that is also self-plagiarism. That's also not good. A lot of people think that is. So I'll tell you, as young researchers, many of you know that copying somebody else's work is wrong. But I know there would be few of you. I've seen this in different sessions that I take. There are people who think that if I'm using my own work, it is not wrong, but it is, because new paper is all about originality. So if you are recycling your own papers, then again that is wrong. Okay. And you have other examples like the forgotten footnote, okay, or the misinformer, the too perfect paraphrase. Okay. Now in all these there are different scenarios, taking something from here, taking something from there. But what I find is that a lot of people, what they do is they just copy everything, especially the literature review. They just copy the entire literature review, and they just using Microsoft Word, they just paraphrase it and they pass it off as their own. The review of the literature becomes their own. I have seen this happening many times. I've seen this, many researchers resorting to this kind of practice. Okay. So that's one thing. The other important thing is, if you look at the misinformer, that's very interesting. What does a misinformer do? He will write, but he will write the sources in such a way that you will not be able to find those sources, and you will not be able to catch him or her, that he has actually plagiarized something. But today it has become very easy. But this was a time, I'm talking of, let's say, some 20-30 years back, when you did not have internet. A lot of people used to quote, change the pages, change the journal, when everything was in hard copy, physical form, they would change the numbers, they would change the volumes, and people were, people would find it very, very difficult to locate them. So you had that kind of researcher also who would do those things. Okay. So all these are called as, these are all different types of plagiarism. Then you have the resourceful citer category. What happens in this particular situation? You have a writer who cites all sources and paraphrases also. That is, there is originality, and that paraphrasing has to be done with citations and using quotations appropriately. So he does all those. But what is the catch? The catch is that there is no original work. So what he has done is, he has picked 10 different papers, and he is not passing it as his own. He has just stitched all 10-20 different papers together. Okay. And they've all been paraphrased, and they've all been quoted. So there's nothing wrong in that. The only thing is, there is nothing original that he has done. Many review papers are like that. Many review papers I have seen are like that. So people review the literature, they just take literature from one source, second source, third source, they quote it, they paraphrase it, but they can't justify what is their original. They have not even critically reviewed the literature. So they just put the literature together in one place. So this happens in many review studies. Okay. Then there is the perfect crime, which researchers term as the perfect crime. Okay. So we all know that there is nothing like a perfect crime. In this case, the writer properly quotes and cites sources in some places. Okay, so what he does is he's doing a mix. So he does it partly, and then he paraphrases other arguments from these sources without citation. So half of the work he tries to pass it off as cited work, and the rest he tries to pass off as, after paraphrasing, changing synonyms, juggling around with those things, and tries to pass it off his own. But today, with the advent of technology, and with very, sharp and alert editors in quality research journals and sharp and alert reviewers, the perfect crime is not so perfect anymore. Okay, so people tend to get caught. Now, paraphrasing is what? You just have a look at this. Paraphrasing is not illegal, but properly acknowledging, citing is. If you don't cite it, then it becomes illegal. Just by changing. So look at this. Plagiarism and paraphrasing. If you look at the first paragraph, so this is a direct quote from the research. Okay, so Japan's beautiful Mount Fuji, and there's a paragraph. Now, when you are paraphrasing it, it's a non-plagiarized paraphrase. Mount Fuji, the highest mountain in Japan, is actually dormant. So, the language and everything is changed, but you need to cite this, not merely changing the way, not merely paraphrasing it, but you have to adequately cite this. If you don't cite it, it is plagiarized, even if it is paraphrased. So always remember that. So you have to cite this as well, that this has been taken, this particular paragraph has been taken somewhere else. So you have to have a, in-text citation or inline citation for this. Okay, I'll tell you later on what are in-text and inline citations. But you must understand this, that this has to be converted into this. So this becomes original. And when this is with a citation, then it is a non-plagiarized paraphrase. Okay, so this is something that you need to distinguish. Same, this is another example of what plagiarism is and what paraphrasing is. So if you lift exactly like this, verbatim, obviously it is plagiarism. If you change it and you don't quote it, it is again plagiarism. Okay, so what are the plagiarism policies? Couple of things. One thing that I would like to make very, very clear at this point of time, there is a difference between plagiarism and similarity. You need to understand this. Many of you think that similarity and plagiarism are the same, but that is incorrect. Plagiarism is something else. Plagiarism is copying somebody's ideas, work, paraphrasing it, not acknowledging it. Whereas similarity could be due to many other reasons, I'll tell you. So how do we catch this? Earlier it was very, very difficult, but with the advent of technology, you have a lot of professional plagiarism detection tool. Okay, so there are tools like Turnitin, Authenticate, Viper, many others. You can use those tools. Some of them are paid, some of them are free, or some of them are for trial periods. You can use these tools to find out the level of similarity in your research papers. Okay, and you get a comprehensive report. So, like for example, my university has access. Any PhD that is going to be submitted has to go through this, the process. That is, it has to go to the central library where they will run the, they will put it through the software. The software will generate a report. In foreign universities and many, well-paid universities or well-off universities, let me put it this way, not well-paid, well-off universities, they have institutional access to, Turnitin. So like my university has institutional access to Turnitin. Similarly, many other universities have, and the faculty members also have access to that. So I have access to Turnitin. I can email my paper, and within 30 minutes, they'll send me back the paper, giving me the similarity index. Okay. So today it is very easy. So editors have this, and you as a researcher also have this tool. Even your student assignment and everything else, you can, actually, check using these plagiarism detection tools. So there are Turnitin, Authenticate. Okay, and these manuscripts are checked against a database of more than 20 million, and probably 50, 60 plus publishers. Okay, so this is the plagiarism detection tool. And what is the plagiarism policy? Every journal has a different guideline, okay, in terms of, the level acceptability of plagiarism. So that's one thing. But most of them have a uniform policy when it comes to plagiarism, slightly different in terms of the percentage. Some could have 8, some could have 10. But the generally accepted principle is that there should be a 10% similarity. Never ever confuse this with plagiarism. Nobody says 10% copying. 0% copying is acceptable. There is something called as similarity. Similarity is something else. I'll come to that, So, and I'll show you with the help of it. Similarity versus plagiarism. Plagiarism is verbatim copying. The software can only give you, it will not be able to tell you whether an idea has been copied, or whether a process has been copied or whatever. It can clearly tell you that yes, some sort of verbatim copying has taken place, and it has not been, or it has been cited or it has not been cited. It will tell you, and you will have to assess that. I'll tell you how it is. So this is termed as similarity. So the report has to be examined, and the basis of that report that is generated by these softwares, you will see whether a paragraph which was paraphrased, has it been quoted or not. So you will have to examine that. You will have to use your discretion. So most of the universities permit a 10% similarity. Nobody permits plagiarism, by the way. Okay. So softwares like Turnitin, Authenticate, iPlagiarize, Viper, etc. help you find out the similarity index. UGC has made it mandatory. Okay. So UGC has a certain guidelines. Very quickly, like for example, this is Emerald. I just want to show you this. Emerald has an editorial policy. You can go to Emerald website and you can have a look. Like for example, I've just copied this. Like for example, so these are the following types of ethical misconduct which should be avoided. So they clearly list it out: verbatim copying, paraphrasing, reusing parts of work without attribution, self-plagiarism, republication of original work, attribution, handling allegations of plagiarism. So you can just this is a drag down menu. You can drop down menu and you can have a look. Okay, like I've just taken the screenshots. For example, verbatim copying. So verbatim copying of more than 10% or a significant passage or section of text of another person's work without acknowledgement, references, or use of quotation marks. So they call it verbatim copying. So anything which is more than that is verbatim copying. Okay, and I'll tell you what is acceptable and what is not. Like I said, even if it is less than 10%, it only similarity is allowed, not copying is allowed. Paraphrasing. So this is an example of a report of one of my research scholars he's a professor who is about to submit his thesis tomorrow. So I just took a screenshot of his originality report. There is 0% similarity, which is very rare. I've never seen this. So what I'll do is very quickly, I'll just show you one of my scholars who submitted her thesis sometimes back. So this is her, this was submitted on 25th of March, okay? And so there is a report at the end. I just quickly go to the report, which has been generated. And so this is the report that has been generated of her thesis by Turnitin software. So I'll show you the summary very quickly. It says there is 6% similarity, 5% in internet sources, 4% have been from 4% of the content has been from publications, and 2% has been taken from student papers. Now, when I look at the primary sources, it tells me that 2% has been taken from Emerald, different journals, less than 1%, one particular paper, less than one. So as long as this is less than 1%, it is not a worry. Okay, it is not a worry because it satisfies the UGC criteria also. And I have to look at the overall similarity index, which the overall similarity index is 6%. Okay, so you can have some similarities. If somebody is writing, like for example, luxury brand preference, whereas, so this is also being shown as a similarity. So this could, this is a sentence. You can write the sentence in proper English two ways, 3 ways, 4 ways, 5 ways, 6 ways, not beyond that. So there would be some similarity. This doesn't mean it has been copied, but the software is saying that yes, there is a similarity, and there is similarity with this number too. Okay, so just to tell you that the similarity index should be less than 10, and ideally all these the different sources that it has listed out should be less than 1. This is a very good. It can be 2 or 3 also, as long as this overall figure is less than 6. Okay, so this was about your thing, and let me just tell you. So this is penalties which have been listed by UGC. UGC says that there are different levels. They talk of 4 levels, and it has to do with the submission of thesis and dissertations. So if the similarity is up to 10%, see, they are not talking of plagiarism. They're only talking of similarity. Similarity up to 10%, minor similarities, there is no penalty. If it is 10 to 40%, the student will have to submit a revised script and the time that he or she will be given is 6 months. Okay. Similarly, similarities above 40 to 60%, so they will be debarred, okay, for a period of 1 year. Similarly, you have penalties in case of academic and research publication. So this does not have to do with the thesis part of a research scholar. This could be anybody. This could be a teacher. This could be any research scholar who's writing a publication. Again, the same thing, But obviously, the penalties are different. So you have level 0, which is 10%, then 10 to 40%, 40 to 60%, and 60% and above. I'll leave this when I give you the PowerPoint presentation. The handouts. You can read it at your leisure. So these are from the UGC regulations. Okay, so this is taken from a gazette. So you can look at what is the punishment for a repeat offender and repeat cases of plagiarism, etc., etc. Okay, so you have committees where you can appeal, and the committees examine the case and everything. So if you are proven of plagiarism, which takes a long time, okay, but once it has been established that you have committed plagiarism, these are the penalties which will be levied on you. Okay, so This is a little bit about what you call as plagiarism. Then let us come to the conflict of interest, because it's already 4:10. So what is conflict of interest? For example, when look at the professors like Professor Ringel, Professor Hare, all these people, they are writing, research publications and publishing in different journals, but they are also they have what you call as textbooks, and they have a software called as PLSM. So they are promoting PLSM technique. So they have to disclose, in the research paper that, we have a financial stake in this particular paper. So conflict of interest can be of many types. Okay, it could be political, it could be, related with your ideological politics. Like, for example, many people are against many activities. People are against, let's say, divorce. Some people are against remarriage. Some people are against abortion. Some people are against many. They have their intrinsic belief, so they will have their own biases when they are examining, reviewing such a paper or writing a paper. They will have those biases. So that is to do with conflict of interest. Okay, and then we have a list of carelessness and citation biases. I've already elaborated upon this, so I'll not elaborate on this. Couple of important points. What is fraud? Okay, and academic fraud, okay, which is basically your fabrication of data and falsification of results. Let me tell you, one is fabrication of data. No data exists, and people actually make fake data, copy it from some other source, tweak it, and present it as their own. I have seen this happening, especially with experimental researches. People don't fill up the questionnaires, they just fabricate the data. So when the data does not exist, you create data for your research. That's called as fabrication. But what is falsification? Falsification is that you do not report the results. There is a big debate going on, especially in the times of COVID. People are saying there's a lot of falsification, and that falsification has to do with the side effects of the COVID drugs or the COVID vaccines. That kind of data is not being made available. So that's again what you call as an academic fraud. So that comes with falsification. The other is post hoc analysis. That is, you are actually, once you know the results, based on that result, you go back and tweak your model, or weed your data, or any problematic variable that might be there, you just go and weed it out. That again is called as falsification of result. I have seen people do this. Factor analysis is a very common example. I've seen people come up with perfect factor structures when doing an exploratory factor analysis. I've seen that. So what is that? I know there are a lot of people who are actually fabricating and falsifying the data. Okay, so this is a very, very common practice. Now, obviously, there are a lot of other things to cover, so I don't want to take too much of time on this. With this, let me just go ahead and I'll show you some slide how things happen. Hungarian president had to resign. German minister had to lose his doctorate after plagiarism law. And there was an academic scandal in Japan. Even in India, Japanese, a very famous groundbreaking research this gentleman had done, but it was found that it was a fake research. Okay, so it was a completely fake research. Then we had our former DU vice chancellor who was accused of plagiarism, and he was put behind bars. So we got to be very, very careful when we come to this. I don't want to take too much of time because we've already consumed a lot of time. Very quickly, I will go to the other topics that we need to discuss today. One is the intellectual property rights, and your copyright and first of all, let me tell you what are intellectual property rights. Okay, intellectual property rights is not one word. It has an omnibus term. So intellectual property right is a broader term. When we use the word intellectual property right, it means copyright, it means patent, it means trademark, it means geographical indicators. So it is an omnibus term. It contains 7 other terms. So very quickly, I will tell you what intellectual property is. So intellectual property is a result of intangible assets. Okay, usually. Okay, so intellectual property is something to do with intangible assets. So IPR basically consists of patents, copyrights, geographical indicators, trademarks, industrial designs, and there are a couple of other things, to do with your circuit designs and chip designs. But for academics, we are only interested in patents and copyrights, 2 dimension of what we call as IPRs. Okay. Now, these are exclusive rights. Now, when we talk of patents has to do more with science. Okay. So as an academician, you may want to patent something, a new invention, a new machine, something or a new drug that you might have come up with, you can get a patent for that. Since time is short, I'll just tell you, you can apply it, most of the universities, big institutions, they have a IP cell that is called as intellectual property cell. So this cell will help you in getting, getting a patent. Getting a patent, takes some time. You have to apply for that patent, in the Indian Patent Office. That patent gets published, and you ultimately get a patent after probably, there's a time, 4 or 5 years. If you are doing it individually, you have to spend 5,000, 6,000 rupees. If you are getting an institutional patent, the payment is more. But patent gives you the exclusive right, okay, to commercially exploit that invention or whatever, the design that you might have patented. Okay, in India, patenting is especially with academicians is not very popular. People publishing the researches is publishing the research is much more prestigious. So a lot of people actually, because there are rewards associated with that, so a lot of people tend to not patent but to publish. Okay, so patent gives you an exclusive right of 20 years to exploit that commercially, but that is not happening most of the time. So people tend to publish their researches rather than go in for patents. But for people in computers and other sciences, they can actually, or engineering, they can go for patents. When you come to social sciences, it's all about copyrights. What exactly is a copyright? Copyright basically is the right, okay? It is a right recognized that an author who has, or somebody, as an author, let's talk because we are researchers, as an author, you have created something. That means you can actually economically exploit that. That is, you can write a book, okay, and you can make money out of that. You can distribute your book, you can make a song, I can make a video, and I can commercially exploit that. So basically copyrights have two dimensions. One is the economic right of the author. That means you can commercially and economically exploit that for a limited period of time. Patent is for 20 years, copyright is for 60 years after the death of the author. Okay, but generally what is happening in the case of books and all these, the copyrights are actually bought by the companies, and the companies never die. The companies live in perpetuity. So your copyrights also live in perpetuity. So in India, copyright, the validity of the copyright is, and you don't have to apply for a copyright, by the way, you just write copyrighted. Okay, so this lecture that I'm delivering today is copyrighted. The class lecture that I deliver is copyrighted. This presentation is copyrighted. Okay, I don't have to say that it is copyrighted. I don't have to apply for a copyright. Okay, now what do institutions do? Like, for example, if a PhD is submitted, the institution takes the copyright. So the copyright is vested with the institution. So the institution can commercially exploit that if they want to. Same is the case with when you are writing a book. So when you write a book, the copyrights are vested. You can have it on your own if you want, but generally what happens, the copyright is with even the best of the authors. Kotler, you want to take whosoever name that you want to take, Shar, Shapiro, any one of them, Robbins, all copyrights are held by the publishers. Okay, so ultimately, because publishing houses never die, so the copyrights are in perpetuity. So the life of the copyright is 60 years after the death of the author. In Europe and America, in America and England, it is 70 years, and rest of the world it is 50 years. So that is the norm. But you don't have to apply for a copyright. Now, when it comes to copyrights and patents, the jurisdiction is territorial. Okay, that means patents are valid. If you apply for a patent in India, it is valid only in India. But your copyrighted work is globally, copyrighted. But then, there are other issues in terms of, how to enforce that and all that. So that's something else. But so you just think of it as having a territorial connotation. That means patents and copyrights are applicable to India if you are getting it in India. There's a difference between IP and IPR. IP is the intellectual property. Okay, so writing the book is an intellectual property. Idea or an invention is an intellectual property. And when you register a patent for it, it becomes an intellectual property right for you to exploit commercially, economically, whichever you want. So I was just telling you about the copyright part. In terms of copyrights, there is another thing, even if you don't hold the copyright, there's something called as the moral right of the author. Moral right of the author, what does it mean? It means that, let's say you have written a book. Okay, it's a novel. And you have given the copyrights to the publisher. The publisher cannot make, let's say the hero dies at the end. the publisher cannot change the ending. He cannot make the hero, live at the end. He cannot do that because that is your moral right. Like, for example, Mona Lisa's painting. So let's assume that I am so rich, I buy that particular painting and Mona Lisa is smiling, I make her crying. I change that. I cannot do that, even though I am the owner now. So those things are related with the moral rights. You cannot change the ending of the book. You cannot change the contents of the book. You cannot change the content of a story. Those are the rights which are vested, even though the owner may be somebody else. Okay, you may have transferred, but that remains with the author. Okay, always remember that. Okay, so intellectual property law, how does it work? It is not a protection that you are granted. It is an affirmative right. That means if somebody copies your work, you can file a case. If somebody copies your product, you file a case. So it is a law which does not give you any sort of protection. It is an affirmative right, not a protection. That means once you hold a copyright, nobody else can copy it. People will copy it. The only thing is, once you find out that somebody has copied it, you can file a case against them and you can, take them to the court. So copyrights and patents in research, very briefly, I just want to close this because time is short. Universities and institutions generally have an IP cell. You can contact your university and they will guide you. So if you are from science and if you have an invention or a design or something unique, you can get a patent for that. And for the rest of the artistic, literary work, media broadcast and productions and everything else, publications and thesis, it is copyright. Okay. So in India, researchers prefer to publish than patent because of the reason that patent has no commercial viability. And if you are patenting something, you are stuck. You can't publish it unless and until it is patented. So people tend to publish because publishing has its own reward in the form of, there's so many things that we have discussed why we tend to publish. So publishing has its reward in India. In Western countries, the universities hold a lot of patents, and those patents are commercially exploited also. Okay. I've told you about the economic rights and the moral rights of the author. Economic rights, the right to make money of your work, and the moral right that nobody can make alteration or changes to your work, even if you don't hold the copyright. You have sold it to somebody else, but then nobody can make a change. So that if the painting has been sold, I can't change Mona Lisa. Okay, got the point? And universities usually tend to have a copyright transfer policy. Like, for example, when you submit your thesis, the university will get the copyright. Similarly, when you write a research paper, the copyrights are transferred. Okay, you have seen that. And when you write a book, the copyrights are transferred. So you hand over your copyrights to the publisher. You sign you have to sign the copyright form. Similarly, when you are writing a book, you have to sign the copyright, and the copyrights are assigned to the publisher or to the journal publisher or to the book publisher. Okay, so this is very briefly in copyright, and because a lot of other things that I need to take up, otherwise I could have spoken on this endlessly, and the time is short. So let's move ahead. Let's come to your very quickly about journal. What about citations and indexing? This is something that I want to, and I know all of you have been. This has already been covered, referencing styles, APA, that is American Psychological Association, and Harvard style. I'll tell you how to do it practically, okay? And I'll tell you some tools which I think as a researcher you would be more interested in. So one of the things that you can actually do, okay, is actually go to a site called as Mendeley. I don't know how many of you have heard of this, okay? So you can actually go to Mendeley. And Mendeley is a wonderful, resource to actually have. Okay, so when you go down to Mendeley, there are three things that you need to download. One is the Mendeley desktop. The other is called as the, web importer, and the other is the citation plugin, which is used in MS Word. This web importer actually gets embedded in your, like for example, I have this Mendeley web importer, as you can see. This Mendeley has, immense use for researchers, especially for young researchers. I was unlucky because in my time it was not there. So I'll tell you very, very quickly without taking too much of time. I'll just open up Mendeley that I have here. Okay, so I'll open up the desktop app. I already downloaded it. You can download it. It's very, very easy. Okay. Now, I'll just demonstrate very quickly the functioning of Mendeley. Okay, because so once this desktop opens up, you can see there are a lot of papers which are listed here. And you can see there was a synchronization that was going on. I can just write this and it will synchronize. So my Mendeley, I can use desktop application, I can use any computer and I can access my Mendeley because all these papers are on cloud. Okay, so one Mendeley acts as your library. What you can simply do is, we all download multiple papers. We have so many papers in today's time. We are using, whether those papers are paid or unpaid, we know the via media like Sci-Hub. We download a lot of research papers for free without even having to pay for that. So like for example, I have some 10,000 research publications, research papers actually, not research publications. I have research papers downloaded. So what I did was I just, copied all those research papers. I dragged and dropped them to this particular screen, and all of them got listed here, as you can see. Now, this tells me that this particular paper is only a citation. It is not a full paper. But for this, I have a PDF. For this, I have a PDF. For this, I have a PDF. Now, how to use this Mendeley? Again, I'll just show you some example. And again, very quickly, let's say I'm writing a research paper, because this is the toughest part most of the researchers encounter. So let's say I'm writing a research paper, okay, and I'll just take one paragraph to demonstrate the concept. Okay, let's say I'm writing a research paper, and this is one paragraph that I have written, and obviously the first one has been cited from a particular paper. So I want to cite it. So this is called as an in-text citation. So if I want to cite it, what should I do? I have this, if you look at, I have this paragraph here in front of me, and I have these references here in front of me. And you can see when I click on this references tab, I get everything. So by the way, by default, your Microsoft Word also has a reference manager, but that is not as good as Mendeley. So when I open up Microsoft Word, and I've already added Mendeley with the Microsoft Word plugin. I told you there are 3 Mendeleys which are available: one desktop, one for your browser, and one for your Microsoft Word. So in my case, it is already installed. Now, if I have to cite an author, so what do? I just put the cursor wherever I want to cite. So for example, usually it is end of the paragraph or end of the sentence. So it is at the end of the sentence. I put the cursor here, and I'll go to this particular insert citation. This is called as Mendeley Cytomatic. So I'll go to this insert citation. First, I already have a library. As you can see, I have a Mendeley library. You just saw it a few minutes back. Okay. So I have this Mendeley library. This is my Mendeley library. All my papers are actually here. They are on cloud, and they are on my desktop also. Okay. So I'll go to this document, and here I will click insert citation. Now Mendeley is going to, either I can type the name of the author, like for example, if I want to search, so I can just search it by, let's say, Bilal. So it will give me the names of the paper which are listed by Bilal. Let's say I want this human resource management in Islamic perspective. So you can see the paper here that I was talking of a few minutes back. Or look at this particular paper, effect of humorous advertising on brand recognition, or any other paper. So all the papers that have Bilal as an author will be listed here. So let's say it was this particular paper, importance of brand personality to customer loyalty. I'll just click this, and the reference has come here. You can see Farhat and Khan, the reference has come here, right? So this is one way. Another way is that I want to, let's assume that I want to put, for explanation purposes, I want to put a reference here. So again, I'll go to citation, and instead of, I don't remember the author. So I'll click the button, go to author. When I go to author, it opens up a tab. Let's say this gentleman, Ziauddin A, or Jorisberg Carl, I want this to be cited. So I'll click on this. As soon as I click on this, I get a cite button here, which was not there before. So I'll hit the cite button here, and Mr. Jorisberg will come here. So I can do it for n number of citations. So my life becomes very easy. But this is not the best part. The best part is, how to use this. The best part is that I can change the referencing style. Now Mendeley, with one simple click, so I don't have to forget about how to write and type. I don't have to write and type anymore. So the style that I want, if I want American Political Association, I'll get the American political. So I'll have to select this. So if I select this, this has changed. Let's say I choose something else, some other. I choose MLA. So if I choose MLA, see suddenly the year is not here anymore. So similarly, I can choose whichever I want. And let's assume that the style that I want, like for example, I want Vancouver. So Vancouver is missing. So I'll go to this more style. And when I go to this more style, I can type Vancouver. So I'll get this Vancouver. Or if I want the style for a particular journal, I can search for the journal also. So let's say, for example, Journal for Business Research. If it is here, it will tell me. If it is not, I'll have to get more styles. I'll have to use the option of get more styles. Okay. So you can look at, these are some of the styles that you want. So let's say I click the Vancouver one. I can get more styles also. I can even get for the journals also, but that is going to take time. So I'm not going to go into that. I'll use this example here only. I'll hit done. So I'll get Vancouver now. Okay. So I can use Vancouver, and similarly, I can keep on adding as many styles that I want. Okay. So I'll say use this style and I'll write done. So I'll get Vancouver here. So Vancouver is this particular style where you have the number only. Now, this is just one dimension that I can change the referencing style, because I write a paper, it gets rejected in, let's say, a journal on Science Direct, it gets rejected. I want to send it to Emerald. Now, Science Direct journal had a different, what you call as formatting. And let's say the journal on Emerald, Journal of Product and Brand Management has a different style of referencing. Let's say on Palgrave, Journal of Brand Management has a different style. So there is a Journal of Brand Management, there is a Journal of Product and Brand Management. And I hope I am not running out of time. Okay. I know the time is a little bit less, but nevertheless, we don't have much time. Let me just quickly, go ahead. So if I want to submit it to a different journal, I can just simply, go and change the styles. So for example, Journal of Brand Management wants Vancouver style, and Journal of Marketing Research wants APA. So I'll just hit APA and everything will change simultaneously. And these are just two references. In my paper, there could be hundreds of references, thousands of references. Everything will change automatically. This is one dimension. The other is, I can also generate the bibliography. Okay. So I write references. References. I write references and I can generate the bibliography here. Even the spelling is just because I'll just write insert bibliography. So I want to insert bibliography. I click the button insert bibliography, and you can see I've got the bibliography here. I want to change this. I want to change everything to, let's say, Harvard style reference format. So everything is now changed. I want to change this to Vancouver. So the referencing style has changed. So one simple click, you can change your entire references, bibliography, and in-text citation. Now, before I go ahead, before I end this particular topic on referencing and citation, very quickly I want to tell you something. There is a difference between bibliography and references. References are all those citations which are present in the text, which have been given in the text. Bibliography is a bigger term. It includes all the references as well as all those sources that you have referred to, but you may not have directly cited in the set. Okay, so cited in the paper. So all those references that you may have referred to, okay, and you may have drawn upon in terms of ideas and everything else, but you have not actually given an in-text citation for that. So that is called as a bibliography. So bibliography is the bigger word. It includes references as well as other sources which you have not actually referred to directly in the text. And what we have here, which you can see, I just click it to Harvard. All these that you can see are basically called as, these are called as in-text citation. Okay. Now, before I end this, many times you will see people start with like this, for example, this kind of Acker, or let's say Bilal, 2000 is in bracket, let's say Bilal 2000, like this also, this inline citation. You have this also. There is no option in Mendeley to have this kind of citation. Okay. So there is a via media. Very quickly, let me tell you. See, these are all within the brackets. These are within the brackets. Okay. But this is outside the bracket. This is usually when you start a particular sentence or a paragraph, you use this kind of citation. Okay. So how to do that in Mendeley? Very quickly. Let's say I want a citation here. So what I'll do is I'll again go to insert citation and I'll go to Mendeley library and I'll pick this gentleman. Oh, I picked up his paper. So, okay, I'll just cite him. Okay, so it is cited now. Lorenzo and Suesca and Fernando, but it is not in the same format. So what do I do? There's a catch here. There's a via media. I have to actually copy this part. Okay, so I have to copy this. I have to copy this. And then what I can do is as soon as you can see it is highlighted, when it is in black, it is highlighted, this insert citation becomes edit citation. So when I go to edit citation, okay, I will go to this Lorenzo this. Suddenly, when I click on this Lorenzo Seva, it says suppress author. So I'll suppress author and I'll hit the button OK. So now you can see it is only the year which has come. But I've already copied the name, so I can just put the name like this. So my citation becomes the kind of citation that I wanted. Okay, now if I want to insert bibliography, so that Lorenzo comes here. Okay, so it oh, I put the bibliography here. I have not used the right page. I'll just redo this. So I'll just delete all this, delete this bibliography, and let's say I want a bibliography now. So I can just go and insert the bibliography here, and you have the bibliography: Rafat, Jorisberg, and Lorenzo Seva. So this is about referencing and how to do the citations. This is the easiest thing that is available. It is free. You download it. I recommend this to all of you. Okay. Now I end this particular topic here itself, and if the organizers permit me some more time, I would like to actually dwell upon the other two remaining topics. One is the journal indexing and impact factors and citations. And obviously the last is the research grant. Research grant I'll browse through very quickly. I just need 5 more minutes for journal indexing and 5 minutes for the research grant. Okay. So I hope the organizers permit me this time. Now let's talk of journal indexing, impact factor, and citation. Yes?
Yes, sir, you can continue, sir.
Okay, let me just continue because there are a lot of things that I want to elaborate upon. So let me just do it. Okay, so journal indexing, impact factor, and citations. These are 3 different things, related things. As a researcher, you need to know. Okay, first, what is journal indexing? I'll go through this very, very briefly. You see, if you look at this, a lot of people ask me that, sir, what is a paid journal? What is an index journal? What is a non-index journal? What is Scopus? What is Elsevier? Who are journal publishers? So I'll try to answer your questions very, very quickly. The questions or the doubts that you might have in your mind. Okay. So I'll go to very quickly. First is, you have an abstracting service. So you have the an abstracting service provider. What does he do? He compiles all the abstracts together. So that is what we call as abstracting of the abstract of the publication. The second is indexing. Indexing is what? Just think of what is indexing. You have your Bombay Stock Index. You have your National Stock Index. What are these index? These index are where your stocks are listed. So if the stock is not listed, you can't trade, right? So what does listing help you? Listing helps you in gaining visibility. So indexing and your journal being in an index helps you gain visibility. अगर आपका journal index नहीं है तो उसे कोई जानता ही नहीं है, उसे कौन पढ़ेगा जब वो list? It is just like a share. अगर वो indexed है और अच्छी databases में indexed है, अभी जयपुर स्टॉक एक्सचेंज में कोई इंडेक्स है तो स्टॉक तो कोई इशू नहीं है, nobody knows. But BSE, NSE are the prime index. India के बहुत सारे stocks, IT stocks are listed at Nasdaq because Nasdaq is one of the most happening index for stocks. Similar is the concept of index in your research. Okay, so what happens? You have an indexing service providers, and what does he do? He has a list of the articles, the cited article, your article, and the articles that you have cited. Okay. So for when you write a research paper, he has your research paper's name and he has all those articles which have been cited by you. He compiles a list. Okay. Then an abstracting and indexing is a combination of both the things. Okay. So what happens? An abstracting and indexing. So you have the research title, you have the abstract, and you have the index. Okay. And what you do is you actually summarize and shorten the document and you assign some keywords so that they can be easily searched and they can be easily referenced. So it has to do more with how you are compiling, a library kind of thing, a database kind of thing. And then there are companies which provide abstracting and indexing services. APSCO, okay, ProQuest, Scopus, Science Direct, these are terms that you might have come across, but they are different. Okay, so Scopus is a abstract and indexing service. Okay, it does not have journals on it. it has the list of those journals. It gives you the metrics, the citation scores and everything else. It gives you the analytics, but it does not have the full article. The full articles are in Science Direct or other what you call as databases and repositories that you might have. So very quickly, look at this. Elsevier, what is Elsevier? Elsevier is a company. Remember that. Elsevier has different businesses also. It has R&D solutions, it has clinical solutions, and it has a solution where it is providing you with abstracting and indexing services. At the same point of time, it also has a bibliographic database, okay, which is what you call as Science Direct. So Science Direct, you have all the journals which are there published by Elsevier and a few more. So I'll tell you what those are. Okay. So a bibliographic database, Scopus is basically your abstracting and indexing service provider, which is searchable, which also tells you about the analytics like citations and site scores and impact factors and things like that. Citations are for individuals. Okay. So if I want to find my citation, I can go to Scopus and I can search Bilal Mustafa Khan. It will tell me how many times I have been cited. Impact factors are for journals. If I want to search for the impact factor of a particular journal, I can go to Scopus and I can find out that, for example, Journal of Business Research, what is the impact factor? What is the site score? I'll tell you that in a few minutes also. Okay. So this is how it is. So generally you have more, not generally, you have more than 1,000 index providers, Cabal, Ulrich, but the prominent ones are right now, the respected ones are Scopus and Web of Science. You might have heard of these. Okay, and they are operated by different companies. I'll tell you what those companies are. So Scopus is by Elsevier. Science Direct is a part of Elsevier, and it has all those papers and journals and research articles and the books which have been published by Elsevier. So Elsevier is a publisher also. It publishes journals, a lot of journals. So Elsevier is a publisher, and Elsevier also has Scopus, which is into indexing and abstracting. Okay. So for example, Elsevier's own journal, Journal of Business Research, is also a Scopus index. So in this Scopus index, you will have journals which are not by Elsevier, that is by Science Direct. They could be of other, for example, you can have Journal of Brand Management, okay, Journal of European Marketing. You can have all these journals which are published by some other publishers. They would be listed in Scopus, because the Scopus is an abstracting and indexing service. Okay, so very, very quickly about this. So an index journal, what do you mean by an index journal? Index journal is the one which has been indexed in various databases. Okay, so this journal that I'm just referring to, this Journal of Business Research, by the way, is one of the top-notch journals of business and management. So if you actually get to publish in Journal of Business Research, you can say that yes, I have done something great in life. But this Journal of Business Research is not only, it is published by Elsevier, and it is there on Science Direct, which is the database, and you can search it on Scopus. So it is listed and indexed in Scopus also. But at the same point of time, this Journal of Business Research is indexed in many other databases like Web of Science and many others, Google Scholar. Google Scholar is also another what you call as index service provider, but Google Scholar is actually not very reputed. People are using it's very popular, but it is not very reputed for the simple reason, paper published by any Tom, Dick and Harry, online journal, paid journal, Google Scholar will give you the metrics for that. Scopus and Web of Science are really top notch, very high quality journals. So anybody who wants to be indexed or listed, like the case of stock exchange, anybody who wants to be listed on Scopus and on Web of Science, that journal has to be of very high quality. So journals are listed, not individual papers. Journals are listed on these indexes. Okay, so these indexes like Scopus have got quality parameters, some 10, 15, 20 criteria that you have to satisfy. Only then your journal will be listed there. Okay, so that, and such a journal will be called as an index journal. An index journal is always of a very, very high quality. Not only of high quality, if a journal is not indexed, it will not provide you with visibility. If you are not visible, nobody is going to cite you. And if nobody is going to cite the research papers, the journal will not have any impact factor. And when it will not have any impact factor, it will not be indexed. This is a vicious cycle. So indexation is a must, but if you are a quality journal, only then you will get to Business Journal of Scopus, or you will get to Web of Science. So let me tell you what is Science Direct and what is Scopus. Scopus, I have already told you. Scopus is only the indexing and abstracting. It does many other things, many more things, but it does not have full text papers. Okay, that is there in Elsevier's database called as Science Direct. So Science Direct contains full text articles from journals and books, mainly published by Elsevier. Web of Science is a very funny thing. You might have come across different nomenclatures: Web of Science, Web of Knowledge, Clarivate Analytics, Thomson Reuters, ISI. They're all the same, by the way. The same distinction that the same differentiation that we saw in the case of your Scopus, Elsevier, and Science Direct, the same thing is here. Okay, so earlier Web of Science was known as Web of Knowledge. Okay, and it was actually by Institute of Scientific Information, and it was also a part of Thomson Reuters, science business. Later on, today it is maintained by Clarivate Analytics. So Web of Science is today maintained by Clarivate Analytics. And the best part about Web of Science is that Web of Science does not have any full text paper. It is only an abstracting and indexing. It is not a publisher, by the way. Sorry, what I meant was it is not a publisher. It doesn't publish any. Elsevier does, but Web of Science does not publish a single paper, but it is so reputed. And the first index that was called as the Science Citation Index, it was given by Eugene Garfield in 1972. So it is called as SCI. Okay, SSCI. There are 6 actually. Okay, Emerging Sources Citation Index, Book Citation Index, Conference Proceeding Citation Index. So this is the Web of Science. I will give this to as a part of the handout. You can read it later. So Clarivate Analytics is the name of the company. And again, like they have an abstracting and indexing service, and they have a bibliographic, they maintain a bibliographic database and search engine, which is called as Web of Science. And in this Web of Science, there are 4 separate databases. There is no distinction in Scopus. Scopus only has 1. And here you have the Science Citation Index, okay, Science Citation Index expanded, Social Science Citation Index. You are basically 6. And emerging, which we just saw a few minutes back. Okay, so you have the Science Citation, and you have Emerging Sources Citation Index, and the Book Citation Index, and Conference Producing, which is not mentioned here, but only the 4 are mentioned here. Okay, so Clarivate Analytics, Web of Science is again providing you with indexing services, and they have 6 different types of indices, and they are very, very popular. So most of the people most of the journals want to be listed on Web of Science, or most of the journals want to be listed on Scopus. And I always tell my scholar, paper publish karna hai, if you want to publish Scopus indexed, it should be on Web of Science. Why? Because the vicious cycle. If it is on a good index, it will have more visibility, and it will be in a good journal, and that good journal will have more readership. And when they will have more readership, there will be more citation, and when there will be more citation, the impact factor of the journal will go up. So this is a little bit about indexing, and your Clarivate Analytics, especially the SCI, which was the oldest and the most popular one, uses 28 quality criteria for a journal to become indexed. Otherwise, they will not index it they will not list it. Let me put it this way: they will not include it in their search engine. So you will not be there. Okay. So this is just a comparison of Web of Science and Scopus. And I have put these things here. I'll give it to you as a handout. You can read it. So very quickly, lastly, journals can be indexed and they can be non-indexed. Non-indexed are those which are not listed anywhere. So if they are not listed, they have I shouldn't say generally, there could be some exceptions, but their readership is very, very low, and nobody generally tends to cite them unless and until that's an exceptional case. Non-index journal can be free and they can be paid also. So you should not have any confusion. Index journals can be free and they can be paid. So if you look at this, there are index journals which are free and paid. Many journals today, you have these open access journals, and open access journals are there on Science Direct, Elsevier, Taylor and Francis, Emerald. Everybody is into this open access business, and for open access, you have to pay. The quality of the journal or the quality of the publication is not bad. I shouldn't say that. There's no compromise on the quality, but the publication route is that you have to pay for the publication. But most of the time, you have a free option as well. So You have journal publishers. Journal publishers, you have like Elsevier, Springer, Taylor and Francis, IEEE. These are all publishers. Okay, you have abstracting services and index providers, which are Clarivate, which have Web of Science. Elsevier has Scopus. And in India, you have something called as DY Enterprises, okay, which is Indian Citation Index, ICI. It is not very popular amongst researchers, but it is there. So Elsevier is also providing you with an abstracting and indexing service, okay, search engine database, and it is also a journal publisher where it publishes many journals. So Elsevier is a different case, whereas Clarivate Analytics, Web of Science is only abstracting and indexing. They are not publishing journals, okay. So this is in nutshell about indexing. Let's move on to, so these are some of the good publishers that you need to choose if you want to publish papers. Don't publish in, with journals which are blacklisted or lesser known, okay. So do go for these. Let's come to citations. What are citations? Very quickly, citations are all those things, if let's say I write a paper now and that paper gets published. Tomorrow you want to write a paper on that particular topic and you find that my paper is worth citing. So if you refer to my paper in your article, I will have one citation. So if more and more people refer to my paper, I will have more citations. So citations are always in respect to a particular paper written by a particular individual, okay. So let's say I have written 10 papers and I have got different citations for each of these papers. The sum of all the citations will be my total citations, okay. Now, one of the practices which I told you earlier was self-citation. People want to increase their citation, so they have a lot of self-citations, okay. So what they do is they ask their research scholars, their friends to please cite them. As a reviewer, they tell, new scholars or the papers that they are reviewing. One of the comments is that they will give their paper, they will mention their paper and say that you haven't cited this paper, in the hope that the researcher cite that paper. So that is, I think it's very unethical. I don't, recommend that, okay. Now, general citation report, there are two very, very important, what you call as, sources for giving you the impact factors. There are hundreds and thousands, but never believe them. Only believe the citations given by Clarivate Analytics, which is General Citation Report, or by Scopus. Only those two citations, okay. So General Citation Report is an annual report given by Clarivate Analytics, where it gives you the impact factors of different journals, okay. And I'll tell you, since we don't have too much of time, I'll give you the handout, you will read it, but I'll tell you how this impact factor is calculated. And always remember, impact factor is for a particular journal. It is not for any individual, okay. How is this impact factor counted? I'll show you a formula. Let's say I want to calculate the impact factor of a particular journal in 2015. So how does Web of Science do it? So Web of Science, what it will do is, it will calculate the citations, the total citations of that particular journal. I mean, that each journal will have certain articles and each article will have certain citations. So let's say in 2003, all the research papers in that particular journal had, some citations, okay. Similarly, in 2014, they also had certain citations, okay. And those citations being 500 total. So 2013 and 2014, their total citations were 500 different journal papers, and the total number of papers were 25 and 20, that is 45. So if I have to calculate the impact factor based on let's say Web of Science impact factor, so how do I do it? I very simply look at these two preceding years, okay. I just take into account the papers, because there is a belief that citations come, there is a lagged effect in citation. Lagged effect means that people read the paper and they keep on citing it. So this Web of Science believes in calculating the impact factor this way. So what they will do is, if you want to calculate it for 2015, you don't look at the papers that you have published in 2015. You look at the preceding 2 years, 2013 and 2014. You will add the number of papers and you will add the number of citations generated by those papers, and 500 divided by 45 gives you an impact factor of 11.11, which is very high, by the way. Generally, very few journals will have this kind of impact factor. Nature is one journal which has a very high impact factor. There are, but most of the journals will have an impact factor of 2, 2.3, 3, 4. Look at this example. This has an impact factor of Scienceometrics. It has an impact factor of 2.77. Okay. Now, obviously, like I told you, this is how you calculate. So JCR, Journal Citation Report, by Clarivate Analytics, Web of Science is very reputed when it comes to determining the impact factor. Otherwise, these fly-by-night, these fraud journals that you see, they all talk of impact factors, 5 impact factors. But you must ask yourself, where are they getting these impact? There are hundreds of organizations which give impact factors, but all are useless. The only reputed one is by Web of Science or by Scopus. Scopus does not give you what you call as it calculates the impact factor, but it has another metric, and that metric, Scopus metric, is called as a site score. So Scopus, it takes into account something else. It also includes the year for which you are actually calculating the site impact factor. So for example, you want to find, and they call the impact factor in Scopus is called as the site score. So there's something called as site score, which is exclusive to Scopus journals. Scopus says that, for example, if you want to calculate in 2019, so you look at the last 5 years. Okay, so you can see the last 4 years, 16, 17, 18 and 19. Okay, so you will talk of 4 years and the number of documents published in 2000. So here the window is 4 years, and the divide, and your denominator is also 4 years. In the previous case, here the denominator was different. We were only taking 2013 and 14. So here the denominator, this we are not taking into account. So these are 3 years divided by 2 years. So 500 by 45, 25 plus 20, not this. But in site score, we take that into account also. So we call it as, this gives you the score, and this is called as the site score. So when you are looking at a journal, if it is Scopus index, you may come across an information which is called as site score. So site score is given by Scopus, and impact factor is actually given by JCR. Okay, that is Journal Citation Report, and obviously that's part of your Clarivate Analytics Web of Science. Okay. Now there is another one which you talk of, Google Scholar. Google Scholar is pretty simple. So I'll just very quickly skip this. I'll come back here, and I'll just go to Google Scholar, and I think most of you are familiar with what Google Scholar is. I'll just tell you what this is. So I'll go to my profile, and I go to my profile. Okay, and my profile says that it gives three set of citations. One is my total citations, and it gives me citations since 2016. How do I get this total citation? There are different papers that are listed here. So all the papers that I have, so I'll keep on showing more and more and more. And some of these are cited and some of these are not cited. So it is showing that I have a total of the highest, that is, it's 110. And when I add all this up, when I scroll down and I add all this up, this is actually 559. And since 2016, it is 391. So it is telling me in the last 5 years, I only have 391 citations. Then comes your I-10 index. H index, I'll explain, it's a little bit complicated. What is I-10 index? I-10 index simply means that how many papers have been cited 10 times or more. So if I look at it, I just scroll down and I find that starting from here, 11, 12, 14, this is my I-10 index, that 14 of my papers have been cited 10 times or more by different people. So that is my I-10 index. Now this H index is a very interesting index. It tells me my H index is 12. Okay, or for example, let's take, this is one of my scholars, so I'll just take hers. It's much easier to explain. So she has lesser number of papers. She was a professional also. She's my scholar. She did her PhD in media. So she's now a dean. Her citations are 126. Her I-10 index is 3. Her H index is 6. Now, one of the things that people say that when you look at your H index, ideally, it's funny. It says that your H index should actually be of your age. So my H index was 12. I am 48. So my H index is pretty low. So as a researcher, I'm basically, not even a teenager. So I'm basically a kid. So it should be somewhere around 50. That should be my H index. But anyway, that jokes apart. What is this H index? This H index says that if you look at it this way, this paper has been cited one time. Let's just think of it this way. At least once, this twice, this thrice, this 4 times, this 5 times, and six times. So 6 papers have been cited at least 6 times. That is why your H index is 6 times. But if you look at this one, you have 4. So in order to have an H index of 7, an H index of 7, this 4 has to become a 7. So at least until and unless any one of these papers, any one of these becomes 7, this will not become 7. So if I go back to my example, my H index is 12. That means I mean, if you look at these, it should actually be 14. There is some issue with that, but I'll tell you. So my H index is 12. So if you look at this, 12 papers have been cited. 12 papers have been cited 12 times or more. Okay. So this has been cited 11 times. Unless this becomes 13, this H index will not become 13. Or any other one becomes 13, which is lower than this. For example, this may get 5 citations in, let's say, a month, or 10 citations in a month. This will become 17. As soon as this becomes 17, my H index will become 13. So 13 papers have more than 13 citations. 14 H index means 14 papers have more than 14 citations. You know, so there's a difference between I10 index and H index. Now again, like I'll tell you, Google Scholar is good if you want to be happy, and if it is, you know, it is like the Microsoft Word, or it is like the Microsoft, it is like the Windows, okay, which everybody has and everybody uses and everybody is happy. It is not the most powerful, not the most respected. The most powerful and respected are only two. Always remember, the best metrics that you can get is either at Web of Science or at Scopus. So for example, I have 559, and if I were to search myself on Scopus, this will become 1/10. That is why, you know, people don't want to show their Scopus citations, because they are in high quality journals. Scopus, and always remember, Scopus and Web of Science, they index only those journals which are high quality, and they recognize the citation of those journals which are of very high quality. Now my publications are in, some of my publications have been done by scholars and myself also in some very, you know, just average kind of, you know, journals. So those journals will never ever be listed on Scopus or, you know, Science Direct. So that in nutshell closes this particular topic. Okay. And indexing databases, like I said, there are many: Web of Science, Scopus, Medline, PubMed, DO, Directory of Open Access Journals, and eCompendex, PubMed. There are more than 1,000. Portico, and, you know, China CNKI, and Wanfang Data, and so many, Ulrich and Google Scholar, and many more. So indexing, again, these things are all related: impact factors and citations. Because if you are indexed in good journal, a good journal is only a good journal is indexed in good, what you call as indexes like Scopus and Science Direct. And when it's indexed in a good, what you call as index, the chances of that paper being discovered and referred to by people increases, and your citation score increases. So as an individual, you want your citations to go up, and the only way your citations can go up when you publish in high quality journals which are indexed in, you know, if you are from medicine, you would want to be publishing in PubMed and Medline and all that. But if you are from other sciences and you know, management and social sciences, you would want to be publishing in, you know, Web of Science, journals which are indexed in Web of Science or Science Direct. Okay, so that closes this. Very quickly and very briefly, I'll just go to this, you know, how to get grants. Okay, now I have an entire presentation which is a very long presentation. So what I'll do is, towards the end, I have these, you know, what you call as the links, and I have the details here and the kind of grants which are available. You can just read them at leisure, and the requirements keep on changing. I'll also give you a format, a general format. By the way, different funding agencies. Okay, I'll start from here very quickly. You have different types of agencies which can actually fund your grant, and the grants could be of different nature. Okay, so it could be a development grant, it could be an infrastructure grant, it could be a travel grant, you know, it could be a scholarship, it could be a stipend, it could be faculty development program, it could be a major research project, it could be a minor research project. The grant could go into crores of rupees. So you have international, you know, agencies, you have national agencies, you know, and you have NGOs, you have the United Nations, and you have, so I have a list here. In India, the most common for social science is AICTE, CSIR, okay, and UGC. Now all these, there are many others, by the way, so the list is not exhaustive. So and you have corporate and private. So AICT has travel grant, it has seminar conference grant, international travel, faculty development program. Similar is the case with UGC also, and it has also awards like Young Career Awards for young teachers and postgraduate scholarships. Similarly, CSIR also has all those things, and and awards also. UGC has the major research project. If it is in areas which are listed here as science and engineering and technology, medical, pharmacy, agriculture, you can get a major research project to maximum of 20 lakhs. And in areas social sciences, law, humanities, the maximum amount is 15 lakhs. This keeps on changing. And the minor research project, yes, this also keeps on changing. You need to refer to the website for the latest. Now, in terms of format, the format of writing a research proposal is similar to a research proposal that you submit for a PhD thesis. But then there are differences. One of the key differences is on the outcomes. See, people who are funding you, government may be funding you because it has to fund you. It has to fund education and research. But there are a lot of private organizations who are interested in funding promising research, innovative research. So you have to make a sales pitch when it comes to those private organizations. Okay, so that's one thing. The second thing is the proposals can be very simple, very academic proposals with things like add on things like budgeting and expected timelines, probably a Gantt chart towards the end. And then you can have proposals which are very complex, which will talk about the manpower required, and you will have to take the help of the probably somebody who's known to you in the finance department and everything, so you can have actually prepare the proposal. But today life is very easy. Everything is available on the internet. You can go to their respective sites. They have these guidelines and the formats of how to write the research proposal. Towards the end, I'll just show you one research proposal that we had submitted, and it was to a private organization. Let me see if I have it here or not. It was actually Aim Shet, Jagdish Shet. So he was basically a person of Indian origin, but he is a legend in the marketing, settled in the US. So they had those awards. We applied for it 2 years back. A couple of my research scholars, myself and a professor from France. Unfortunately, we got shortlisted top 3, but we couldn't make the cut because of maybe we were not novel enough, to appeal to the panel or the jury that was actually adjudicating. But you can always keep trying. So what are the important elements? The important elements are it will be written like a research proposal, but the outcomes are very important. You need to have a budget section, because you will be needing funding for that. So what I'll do is, because we are running out of time, I think the time is already up. So what we'll do is I will with my handouts, I will include how to write a research proposal. I'll include the guidelines and the templates and everything else, and you can have a look at that. But the best way, I still maintain, the best way to write a research proposal is that although they have similar elements, okay, but research proposals are going to vary. The different agencies have their own format. So the best way is to look at the format that they are interested in. Okay. So with this, I would like to end the session, and because I've already taken too much of time, and I know many of you have other responsibilities and other assignments which you want to take up. So thank you. I'm open for question and answers.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an exhaustive and extensive lecture. And really, if the time constraint was not there, we would have loved to hear you more on this. So please, it would be very kind of you if you could just entertain few of the queries which have come up to us. The first query is that, do you think that studying references before starting research makes a researcher biased towards a hypothesis?
Just 1 second. I just want to disable the screen sharing. How do we?
It's disabled. It's disabled. We are able to see you on full screen.
Okay. So what's the question now?
The question is that, do you think that studying references before starting the research makes a researcher biased towards a particular hypothesis?
Now, obviously, this all depends. I mean, we are all biased. Okay, and this is again one of the problems of research. We are all biased. If we do not do a comprehensive research, like I was giving you the example a few minutes back, I was giving you the example of that structure equation modeling group where I am part. Now, I am biased towards a particular individual. I never take sides with the gentleman I spoke of, Les Haydock, for the simple reason I don't like his style of arguments. Okay, maybe he's a very good researcher. I acknowledge that. So if I were to take the side and if I were to quote people, I would. Maybe it's a bias, but I'm a human. So my bias is that even though I feel that that particular person is good, I will tend to ignore him. Okay, and I'll refer to some other. So it depends on the situation. Okay, everything is situational. So I hope that answers the question in a roundabout manner. Okay, because I don't know what the situation is, so I have just conjured up a situation. Any other question?
Fine, sir. One more question. What is a good measure of intellectual property protection for multiple countries?
Okay. Now, let's say if, for example, patents. Okay. Like I told you, patents have a territorial, connotation. That means if you get a patent, it is only applicable in India. But India is a signatory to WTO, and when India is a signatory to WTO, it has signed multiple agreements, and there is an agreement where you can file for multiple patents across different countries. Okay, and that is called as patent cooperation treaty. Okay, so in one single go, you can file for patent not only in India, but you can file for other countries. When it comes to academics, if you are, it depends on the nature of your work. If your nature of work is in the form of invention and drug discoveries and all those things, patent is the way to go. And if you are a researcher and you're writing papers, literary, or if you're in the media and communications department and film production and all that, then copyright is the way to go. Okay, and for copyrights, you don't have to file for copyrights. It's an automatic right. Whereas for patents, you have to file for patents.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. And when we have with the last question, which is one of the very interesting ones, what is the future of copyrights regarding sharing platforms and social media, where infringement is happening because people are unaware? Largely, the audience is unaware of the infringement because of the sharing through social media and social platforms. So, what is the future of copyrights?
I'll tell you. Okay, this needs a bigger answer, or a better answer. You see, there are two school of thoughts. One, which is called as the copyright. Now, copyright, as an Indian, or I shouldn't say as an Indian, as a person who has lived in India for most of my life, I feel that copyright is the right to copy somebody else's work, but which is wrong. And so is the case in many developing countries, and underdeveloped countries worldwide. Everybody thinks that copyright is the right to copy. In fact, it is the reverse. There is another regime, by the way, which is called as copyleft regime. Okay, that copyleft regime believes that information should be free. You are not supposed to bind the information. Okay, and if it is paid, people will not be able to access the information. The access will be limited, and as a result, you might have heard of there is a powerful, what you call as search engine called as Sci-Hub. A lot of people these days are using Sci-Hub, which is an alternate, and every day, what is happening? I'm just answering the question. What is happening? That Sci-Hub, every day the website of Sci-Hub is down. Why? Because Sci-Hub, the publishers, because they are losing revenues. So, all the journal publishers, what they do is, every day they ensure that this particular site goes down, but every day Sci-Hub comes up with an alternate, what you call as a web page. Yes. So the future of copyright in an era of information technology is not very, very bright. 5 years back, I was not able to access papers unless and until I had the username and password. Today, I am able to access nearly 90% of the databases with the Sci-Hub. So I don't think the future is very bright. One more thing. As far as there's one is Sci-Hub. There's another thing which is called as is a place just like Sci-Hub. Sci-Hub is for research papers. There's a place for books, and you can download any book that you want. And I have nearly every book I have downloaded from that particular site. That is similar to Sci-Hub. Okay, so what the point is that publishers are losing a lot of money. Okay, we are talking in terms of academics. Same is the case with what you call as your film producers and other people. With information technology, it has become very, very easy I can download whichever book I want. That is a loss to the company, loss to the publisher, loss to the author. Same is the case with journals. Whichever article that I should have, the articles that I should have paid for as a researcher, I am downloading it for free. So I don't think copyright has a bright future. It will be there. It will continue to be there, but it doesn't have a bright future. Authors and publishers will continue to lose a lot of revenue, substantial amount of revenue, in coming times.
Thank you, sir. So with this, we come to the end of 13th day of this 2 weeks long quality improvement program. Today's session has been one of the most enlightening and appropriate for the budding and existing academicians and researchers. So on behalf of the organizing committee, I take this opportunity to acknowledge the efforts of the parties who are involved in the conduct of this session. And first of all, as a token of love and gratitude, sir, we would like to share a small token from our organizing committee. This is a small token from our side.
Thank you. I accept it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. So on behalf of the Department of Commerce and Business Management, Integral University, I would like to extend heartiest vote of thanks to our Chancellor and Founder, Professor Syed Waseem Akhtar sir, for allowing us and motivating us to do such kinds of interactions. A profuse thanks to Professor Nadeem Akhtar sir, Pro-Chancellor, Integral University, for giving us this opportunity and guiding us and supporting us in all our endeavors. I would also like to thank our Vice Chancellor, Professor Javed Musarraf sir, who has always inspired us and encouraged us to take up such endeavors. With deep sense of gratitude, I would also like to thank our Dean, Professor A.K. Saxena sir, and Head of the Department, Dr. Syed Shahid Madar sir, for believing in me and giving me this opportunity to conduct this session. Most importantly, I would like to acknowledge the presence of our esteemed guest, Professor Bilal Mustafa Khan, and I would like to thank him through this couplet. देखा ना कोकन कहीं फरहाद के बगैर, देखा ना कोकन कहीं फरहाद के बगैर, आता नहीं है फन कोई उस्ताद के बगैर. Thank you so
very
much,
much.
sir.
Thank you. So kind of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Integral. Thank you,
And we would
University.
love to
Thank
have
you, the
more
organizers.
interaction in future with you, sir. Thank you.
We'll do something.
And I'm
Thank
also
you.
very
Okay.
grateful
Thank
to
you.
all the faculty members. Thank you. I'm also very grateful to all the faculty members who have directly or indirectly contributed to this online program. Last but not the least, I take the opportunity to place on record a very hearty vote of thanks to the interactive audience who have been a patient listener and interactive listener to this session. Thank you so much, all of you. And with this, we call the day to an end. And tomorrow we shall meet again for the closing ceremony of the 14th day long quality improvement program. Have a nice day ahead. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.